Hi guys, welcome to Rufio, it's Joe here. Apologies if there are any sounds going on in the background. I'm recording at my local ITS store, and of course people get excited outside and are playing their own games. So anyway, I've been wanting to bring this deck profile for a little while. These cards are surprisingly weirdly hard to pick up because nobody wants to keep them. The general opinion is that they're not very good, and whilst that may be, I guess, they're not very meta relevant at the moment, they definitely have some potential, I think. And they're certainly a good fun road deck, definitely something you could take to locals and do alright. So yeah, if you wanted to try this deck out and have some fun, certainly go for it. So this is Elementsabers. Now there are a few different ways you can play this. Primarily it's the build where you go with the Element Lords. I don't want to use the Elemental Lords in my particular build, however, feel free to do so. This is a very budget-friendly deck for the most part. I've got one or two slightly pricier cards in here. Those can easily be swapped out. They're mostly just there for kind of padding it out and giving a bit more utility to the deck, but they can certainly be swapped for something different. So we'll get stuck into the deck without hanging on about much more. So I'll just go through these for you and give you a kind of brief explanation as to what they do. I won't go into too much detail, but just give you an idea. So we run one Elementsaber Nalu. So this one you're going to discard an Elementsaber from hand, and then you can add another Elementsaber or Elemental Lord with a different name to this card to your hand. So that's the first one. So we just run the one of those. I think that's absolutely fine as it is. We are running double Lapauila. I don't know how to pronounce this. But basically this one is just a free negate. It's a quick effect. So if they want to do anything, essentially, you can just send one Elementsaber from hand to grave and negate the effect of Spell or Trap. And there's a bit of a running theme here. They do also all have the effect that they can change their attributes individually whilst in grave, which kind of plays into some of the plays that we want to go through. And there is a bunch of utilities here, so we'll go through them again. As we go along, I'll explain what they all do. So we have Elementsaber Aina. So this one is your monster reborn. So you're going to discard one Elementsaber to the grave, and then you can add one from grave to your hand, different to its name, so you can't always get the same one. We then move on. So we have another one. So we have Malo, and this one essentially is just going to search a deck. Again, it can't add itself. You send one from hand to grave and you can search it. And again, it also has the effect that it can change its attribute whilst in grave, like all the others. We have Elementsaber Molehu. I don't know if that's how it's supposed to be pronounced, but we'll go with that. So this one's got a Book of Moon effect. This is kind of a little bit of a beat stick. It's a level 4, so it's got some additional benefits there. There are a few other level 4s in here that we can make use of, but certainly, you know, that's that one. That certainly gets, that's usually one of my go-tos. Yeah. Moving on, we have slightly smaller, and we just run one of these Elementsaber Makani, so you can add one from your deck to hand, I believe it is. We then move on to our final three. So this one, depending on what you send to summon it, depends on what effects it has. So if you send an earth and a wind, it cannot be destroyed by battle. If you send a water and a fire, it cannot be destroyed by effects. And if you send a light and a dark, your opponent cannot target it with effects. Now there are some benefits to these sendings. It seems like there's a lot going from hand, but don't worry, there are ways to play around it, which we'll cover later on in the video. Moving on. So I'm running 2 BLS, so you can, because you can manipulate your grave so much, having these cool boss monster access is just really, really nice. And it's a warrior, so it can be searched off as old, so that's kind of handy as well. Yeah, it's just an absolutely awesome card. Card's still really strong even in today's game. I think it's still crazy that it's at 3. It has better metas in sometimes than it is now necessarily, but it's still very, very strong. With that graveyard manipulation, we have the ability to use Dark Arm Dragon, which is kind of cool because Dark Arm Dragon is absolutely fucking broken. So the fact that you can just get this out and just start popping cards, and it's got to have 3 whilst it's summoned, but what it has after that's up to itself. So if you just manipulate your grave, so you got 3, and then you change all your others to dark, you've just got like a stupid amount of resources to just blow up your opponent's board. A lot of people don't, remember how good this card is until they see it and they realize, they see it on the field and they realize they're in trouble. We then round off with some hand traps. So we've got triple effect Veiler. This deck is really, really susceptible to being interrupted. Ideally, you want to go first rest, set up a bit of a board, and then the next turn start pushing through your opponent. This is going to help protect your field, stop your opponent comboing off too much, and hopefully you can survive a turn and then just muller them. Much the same with Ash Blossom, Triple Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. This is really, really important again because there's just so many important cards in the game at the moment. Yeah, I would absolutely recommend running 3, and it is a very budget-friendly card now as well, especially with the common reprint. We then move on. So this is one of your most important cards in your deck. So you've got triple Palace of the Elemental Lords. So this is going to give them all a boost. But on top of that, you can also send cards from your deck instead of the ones that you would send from the hand. It does have the ability to add an Elemental Lord from Elementsaber monster, sorry, from your deck to your hand each turn, but then you skip your following battle phase. However, if you do this smartly, you're just going to OTK them anyway. This card is so important to the deck. The monsters themselves aren't that strong, but suddenly you can find yourself with some real beat sticks, and then you can start loading up your grave, because what happens is they're getting 200 for each different attribute in the grave, so you can build up real quick, as you can imagine, with all these different attributes going around. We then also want to be able to protect our plays, so we've got triple Call by the Grave. Again, the deck is, being a rogue deck, it is very susceptible to having its plays interrupted and not being able to execute the things that it would like to. Call by the Grave is just going to help protect us from that. So 3 of these is absolutely perfect. I would definitely not have any less than that. Moving on, we have 2 Terraforming. Again, you want to see that field spell as quickly as possible. If this is at 3, I'd be running it at 3. I would rather have a dead card and have seen all 3 of the field spells than not have access to them when I need them. It essentially means you're running 5 copies, so absolutely should be running that. We run all warriors, so Rota is really important. It's going to help us just dig through the deck and get that a little bit quicker. Definitely recommend running this. Absolutely no reason to ever cut it. If you had access to 3, you would run 3. We got 1 Monster Reborn, so this is just going to help us keep going through our plays. We've dumped so many cards in the graveyard, but being able to just recur them for free is pretty cool. We have 1 Card Destruction. Again, this is just going to help us cycle through the deck, dumping those attributes in grave, just to see the ones that we want to see more quickly. Ideally our boss monsters, so we can just clear up the game, and hopefully interrupt our opponent as well. If they have some really good stuff they don't want to get rid of, this is just going to help us clear up their hand. We have 1 Scapegoat, so this is just going to help us stay in the game for a little bit longer. This is really good turn 1. But yeah, I think at 1 it's absolutely fine. It's just going to help generate some tokens and give you some slightly more advanced plays that you can go into than you would be able to normally. We have 1 Upstart Goblin. So Upstart Goblin, you give your opponent 1,000 life points, but you dig that little bit deeper. You really want to see those field spells, and this is just going to help you get over the line. We then round off the main deck with triple Elemental Training. So this is going to help protect your field spell, and that's the main thing that it does. You can tribute 1 Elementsaber as well and get another one from your deck that's a different attribute, which is kind of cool. There is also an additional effect that we don't really use in this particular build. This is going to help you see some of those Elemental Lords. We don't particularly use that in this one. We then move on to our extra deck. I haven't done a side deck for this, I'm afraid, guys. Again, I think it's just really meta dependent as to whether it's what you want to use in there. So we'll stick with just our Link monsters for now. So we've got double Link Spider and 1 Link Karibo. This is for the token plays. Link Karibo is slightly better. I just didn't feel that multiples is worth it because it affects once per turn. So yeah, triple of these is just going to help you make use of those tokens. We are a warrior based deck, so double Isolde is really cool. Again, it's just going to help you see those boss monsters quickly. You can add BLS to your hand so that the next time you've got access to it. We don't really use a secondary effect. Well, we don't at all because you don't send any equips. You could potentially run those as a way to just see stuff out, but I think we've got enough ways to dig into the deck. We've got 1 Underclock Taker, so when you do make a big boy, you've got a way of shrinking your opponent and just hitting over it for plenty of damage. If they end up with a big beat stick, it's just going to help you get over that line. It's quite cool. Yeah, just cool card to use in any deck that can sort of really find the space for it. We then move on, we have our Nightmare package, so Phoenix, Cerberus and Unicorn. I know that this one's a little bit pricey, these are super cheap. Again, they're just good utility cards. It's easy to get 2 different names on board, so if you have access to these, definitely run them. You could maybe find a budget alternative to this, something like Castell, because we run plenty of 4s. But yeah, absolutely, I would recommend running all 3 of those if you have access to them. We then have one Scauldron. I know that, again, for the budget players out there, this is probably not a good idea. I do think that this is going to hit to 1 soon, and then it'll actually be quite cheap to pick up. Definitely something to consider. Again, just being able to have access to those, we have those 4 tokens. You can just turn them into other useful stuff and benefit from the effects of this. That's all it's really there for. You could do like Borrow Load, which has just had a reprint, or you could do Borrow Sword if you've been lucky enough to pull that, or you've bought into it. But again, it's just any good Link 4 is a good option here. I just think that Scauldron was the most reasonable one to choose. We then move on to our rank Toolbox. So we're running just 4s in this one. Again, they've just got some utility to use. So we've got 1 Tornado Dragon to get rid of any pesky back row. There's slightly less issues with back row decks. I guess there are Altergeist and Sky Strikers kicking about. But this will just give you outs, especially to stuff like Floodgates, which are going to try and play you out of the game. We then have 1 Abyss Dweller. This really hurts stuff like Salamangreat, so it's really important to have access to. This can just switch off your opponent's turn if used correctly. We have 1 Evil Swarm Exciton Knight. So this just gets to blow up your opponent's field. If you find yourself in a situation where you're going second and you can just get 2 4s on board, you can just blow up their entire field and just essentially reset the game state. And if they've committed too much to the board, they'll find themselves in real trouble. We then have just another way to try and win the game, another win button. So this is a good opportunity to use something different to things like a Borrow Sword, which are going to be your win buttons, because this is actually easier to make in this deck. So you go into Utopian, then you pop this over the top, and you're just going to do tons of damage. Again, it is no Borrow Sword, but it's certainly a budget alternative to that. So that's it for the deck, guys. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Apologies, I'm fluffing it a little bit. I'm still learning the deck and get mixed up with all the different effects. And I know when I'm playing them, it's okay, but when you're just sort of looking at them and going through in front of the camera, things get a little bit crazy. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I appreciate you tuning in. I'm going to bring you some more deck profiles coming up. As always, we've got some more great content on the way. Got some cool new ideas, so hopefully we can get through those soon. Big shout out to Mark at Manascrew for giving me the space to record this video. Much appreciated. Again, thank you very much for checking in, guys, and I will see you in the next one.